Good morning. This is the video for October. This one's going to be a little conceptual just because I was discussing something in class a couple weeks ago and one of the students mentioned that I should maybe make a video on this. And this is just how we understand Meyer's guards, particularly what we would call the secondary guards. So in longsword and in the earlier stuff and in Meyer, we essentially have the big four. We have some version of a high cutting guard, and that can be over the head, that can be what we call the answer to the telephone, could be any of the wrath variations, but it is a high cutting guard. We have a high thrusting guard, the low thrusting guard, and then some version of the Alber, which is kind of a provoking guard, I would say. You see kind of those big four pop up a lot. And then you see a lot of secondary guards. Long point is one, things like that. One of the things we were talking about, though, is viewing the guards as a map of transitions rather than postures to fight from, like stances. And I think I kind of assume that people know this already because I think this information has been presented for a long time in multiple areas, and it's kind of common knowledge, but it didn't seem to be, and so I just thought it'd be something to mention. So I'm going to focus on three of the secondary guards because I think they're interesting and they come up a lot, but they may be misunderstood a little bit. And that's going to be Cron, Unicorn, and Key from Meyer's treatise. So Cron is the crown is this. It's the high, we've caught the sword usually in this little view of our coin, so we're standing here like this, right? I think if you fight and you are an offensive person or you fight against offensive people, eventually you're going to end up in this position, this high position where you've collected up under your sword, and you can grapple from there, and you can do some crown cuts from there. And so you're going to end up there in a fight. It's a place to go, and so we need to know things to do from this position. But obviously we're not going to start a fight from here. I'm never going to be in front of an opponent and assume Cron and then walk at them and try to start a fight. I'm going to get my fingers ripped off. I'm going to get my arms ripped off, and I should. It's not a great fighting posture to start from. So if you start to think about, well, all of these guards, if I'm in a fight, eventually I'm going to end up here. And since this is especially in a book where we don't have an instructor, next to us saying, oh, hey, when you get in that position, here's some cool tricks you can do. We need to write down things to do from various positions. And so this is what's happening. I don't think anybody is going to think that, again, that we should assume Cron and then get ready and fight from there. So we're going to get our hands ripped off. Similarly, well, actually, before I get to that, so if you look at Meyer's treatise, when he talks about this position, he only talks about how you get there. Like you're in Alber, you end up here, and then you can do some cool crown cuts and things like that. It's not like he says, and here's Cron, and set up here, and then do some cool stuff. That's not really how it's presented. If you look at Unicorn, which is this guard, it's kind of a variation. You could say it's a variation on Ox, although frankly your point is so up and over, I would say it's really more like a high cutting guard. You're not going to assume this position and then try to fight from there. It's not like I'm going to assume this and then go fight somebody. And in the book, Meyer talks about you've thrown some winging cuts and you've ended up here. So I think this is a place where we've thrown a cut and we've airballed. We've stepped in, we've thrown a cut, the opponent's now coming into this gap that's created, and what are some stuff we can do from there? So again, this is not I'm going to assume Unicorn as like a great place to start my fight and then march in and fight somebody, or assume that position and let them come in and start the fight. This is something that's going to happen in transitions, after cuts, and so again, it's a book, so we need to know what to do from there, but I don't think that anybody would really think that this is a great position to go and start a fight from. Key is maybe a little different in that in Meyer's book, it is specifically kind of described as a posture, and Meyer actually says adopt this in the outset, but he says like the Unicorn. So I think we definitely could assume the Key, which is this, right? This really retracted point forward guard. There are some things you can do from there, but I think it's quite likely that, again, you're in motion and you're ending up in this position. So I think if you're in a plow and you're rising up to the ox position rather than push out, if you're rolling up to keep your structure nice, or you're fencing with somebody, you've done an extended position, maybe a provocation, and then we're retracting to get to the other side, I think we're going to see this type of a motion. And again, what do we do from there? I think he's the most arguable of them, but I would again say I don't really see this being necessarily the most wonderful place to just start a fight from all the time. Looks super cool, and there's definitely some cool tricks you can go in, but if you look at what Meyer gives us from there, he has us extend out of it. So he either has us extend out to provoke or extend out to the straight parry to catch the defense, right, if somebody's attacking us. So it's not like we're going to be here and do a lot as like this is a stable fighting posture. And so I want you to start thinking about these guards, particularly the secondary guards, as more like a map of motion, right? We're going to be in some version of a high guard, we're going to cut through long point, then we're going to come to Alber or the changing guard. And Meyer describes his cuts in this way. He says these three postures happen throughout the space of a cut. And so if you start thinking of the postures as a map of motion, transitionary, I cannot talk, transition places, right, where we can go. I think a good kind of analogy would be if we were to look at like a modern boxing manual, and there's a section on slipping, and you saw somebody doing this. You wouldn't say this is a great boxing stance. Here's your fundamental stance to start from, get in this position, and then creep forward and start a fight from there. But certainly, if you do an inside slip, you need to know what to do coming out of that. So there might be whole sections in a modern boxing manual that talk about the inside slip and then motions out of that, both offensive and defensive. So I think that's a little bit closer to what we're seeing. I think when you look at Crown, when you look at Unicorn, I think it's really, really clear that that's not a place you should start a fight from, but that is a place you're probably going to find yourself sometimes. And so we need to have techniques and strategies to get out of those positions. If I've thrown a winging cut and somebody's coming into this gap behind my sword, if I don't know some good things to do, and even if I do, frankly, but if I don't know what to do from there and I find myself there, I'm just screwed. So when you're working through this material, think about how you can use these postures as a map of motion and transition points to do other things rather than I will adopt this stance and then go fight. So these are just kind of some things we were discussing in the class, and it was mentioned that it might be worth putting out in a video. I hope everybody has a good Halloween tomorrow, and I will see everybody next time.